Well, hello everybody. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's class. We had a little bit of a snafu with our link this evening, so I apologize to my students about that. Somehow it didn't work out properly for whatever reason. I'm sure it was me. But welcome tonight because we're going to be talking about triads and what that can look like. So we're going to be having fun. And excuse me, what's great about triads is you only need 3 colors to make this happen. And you will see tonight how different each of these triads are. And so this might be fun for you to explore some different color combos. Maybe you want to go old masters style, or you want something that has a little more pep and pop that's a little different from your normal run-of-the-mill palette. And so that's really what tonight's class is. If you don't have these colors, that's okay. But this is a great way to learn to create your own color wheel, and then you can use it. A lot of artists create multiple color wheels and they put them up in their studio, and it's just a way to learn. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Paige and I'm the Chief Pixel Pusher and Paintbrusher over here at Gumption and PageWeber.net. And this is a watercolor class, but if you have acrylic paints and you want to do these kinds of color wheels with acrylic paints or something too, that is fine too. Let me know if you're tuning in live with me tonight. Yeah, let me know in chat. I think we had a wrong link, so some people might be heading back over to get to this live stream. So we'll just wait for a minute. And I'm typing in here. We do the best we can to be prepared, but sometimes things just come to pass that you're not expecting. And if you're one of my students, you will have a worksheet that you can access that shows these particular triads and the colors that were used tonight. And I will say the first part of this class, we're going to be setting up our color wheels so you can actually set them up yourself and you're not starting in the middle of class. So that's why I've chosen to do that. My students got early access to kind of set this up ahead of time. But I felt like anybody who's tuning in on YouTube might actually want to be able to do this in real time with the class as well. So, excuse me, without further ado, let's get into class. If you have any questions along the way, or you want to just say hi, go ahead and say something in the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from and say hello. So, all right, let's get to it. All right, so we have to do a little preparation for our class. We're going to do 3 different color wheels, each with just 3 colors each. So we're working on triads tonight. And this isn't an exact science, so I'm building my color wheels on the fly. If you want something a little more exact, if you're part of the Watercolor Rockstar group, I'll give you a template that you can use. Otherwise, you can just do this along with me. I'm going to demonstrate what I'm doing so you can do this at home, and you can either prep beforehand before our class, or you can do this tonight while we are doing this class together. All you need is something round. I have this circular tool that is round that I use, but you can use a jar, a Cool Whip lid, whatever you have to get started. And I'm breaking these up into 12 different increments here. So I have done this in a non-scientific way, so you'll get to do it right along with me here, and I'll demonstrate for you. This is just my rough guesstimation. So I split my circle in half here, And you can see I'm just kind of eyeballing it. It does not have to be perfect. And then I do it the other way. It's sort of like, I think of, you know, cutting a pie, and this is kind of how I've decided to do this. We ultimately want to have 12 slices to our pie, so however you slice it, whoops, however you want to do it, you can do it that way. Yes, and of course, we're going to slip and slide here. So in each of these 4 quadrants, I'm going to do 3 sections in each quadrant. And so I just kind of eyeball it. Because really, I'm working kind of small as well. I would recommend, if you have the space, to work larger if you can. It's fun that way. So I'm just going to split this up. These aren't even close to even or perfect, but it's fine. Perfect or done is better than perfect every time. That's my theory. So yeah, you see, I have a very tiny sliver here. And we're going to do this in this other quadrant too. Break it up into 3 bits. And we'll do this for each of these. Oh, that didn't even work. I could probably use a smaller tool, and this would make this easier. So you need a pencil and a ruler, obviously, and something round. Yeah, not perfect, but as you can see, this is a start. And then we're going to have some sort of red. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have a yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, blue. So between each of these, there should be 3 quadrants between each color. And I'm just marking these for ease of use so I don't get lost. So we'll just do this on our last circle. Same thing. And then we'll get started here. And I'll tell you what colors to get if you are tuning in live. And students, you should have this in your workbook. So half, and then we're going to go half. And then we're going to break this up into each one of these. We're going to get 3 little pie pieces out of that. And what's great about working in this way is that you only need 3 colors, and you can mix all the colors that you want with these 3 colors. This is also a tool that you can put into your arsenal or your watercolor kit. You can also do this with acrylics or gouache, just to have for reference. Sometimes it's fun to try different colors, and some of these paints have different qualities to them. So I'm going to mark this out red. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Blue. So these are going to be the primary colors that we're using to mix all of these colors. And so this is the first step in getting going. And all right, let's move on to our next step. Okay, so you can see by pure magic, I've listed the different triads that we're going to work on. And we're going to start on this one first. We're going to use a cad red medium, cad yellow medium, and an ultramarine blue. This is really just to show you some different options that you can use in your triads. And so I'm mixing up some paint in my big palette here. And I'm mixing up some ultramarine blue here. I'm going to do some of this. This is cad medium or permanent yellow. It depends on your brand, but this is what I like to call egg yolk yellow. And this is one of my staples when I paint. And so this is why I chose this particular color combo. And then we're going to use a cad red medium here. And you can see I have different colors on this palette. I don't always use this palette, but I used it for a workshop that I took, and I really like this big mixing area. So we're going to mix up some pretty concentrated paint here because these are going to be our base colors that everything is based off of. And because my circles are small, my little color wheels are small, I don't have to have a ton of water mixed up here. I'm going to just move this out of the way. But remember when we labeled our red, yellow, and blue, we are going to use the fully concentrated pigments, and we're going to put them in these spaces. Now you might hear my dog in the background. He's coming in and out of my office. Excuse me. He's got his bone and he wants to be included here. So he's coming in. I think he's going to eat. So you'll hear some background noise. So I'm going to start with my yellow here. And we're just going to use, I'm using some flats tonight. So I am painting in my yellow. And again, I'm sorry, the dog is in here making some noise. I think we might have to move him out into the other room here, but lay down your yellow here. Okay, so we've laid down our yellow here. We want to make sure that this is nice and pigmented. And then we'll move around to our other pigments here. I'm going to move to my ultramarine blue. Might need a little bit more pigment here. And each one of these will have different qualities. And sometimes color mixing is the most fun of it all. So have fun mixing for this class. Okay. Next, we're going to move to our red, our cad red medium. Nice, vibrant red. And you may want to hit this with a hair dryer. You might want to take a minute for this to dry because we're going to be laying pigments next to each one of these, and we don't want it to commingle because we want to be able to see a clear difference between the two. So we will let this dry for a minute here. Might see if I can pull out my hair dryer and hit this. So keep painting if you are still painting. It shouldn't take long if you have a small circle like I do. It shouldn't take very long for it to dry. Okay, so I'm going to mute me really quick and hit this with a hair dryer. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to take our pigments that we have and we're going to start mixing them. And you probably know this already, but we have our red here. We're going to mix between these two. We're going to mix the yellow and the red, and we're going to add a little bit of yellow. We're going to add a little more yellow, and we're going to add more yellow. So you should see a clear distinction between these two colors in each level here. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to take our red. I'm going to try to do this so you can see my palette. So we have our red here. I'm going to extend it out here a little bit. We're just going to take a little bit of yellow so it will change that color a little bit. And this feels a little bit more kind of orangey. It's hard to see on camera, but I'm going to take this and this is going to be a red orange. The difference might be a little bit of slight. But we're going to take that mixture and we're going to put it here next. Of course, you guessed it, we're going to wind up with some secondary colors here by doing this. So we have our red-orange happening right now. All right, then we're going to continue adding yellow to this. So we have a clear orange. That's what we're shooting for next. You might have to kind of so we're shooting for some differences here that we can see. So here is our orange. So we have our red orange, our orange. So of course we're going to shoot for kind of a yellow orange mixture. So it's not going to take much for us to get something a little bit yellow orange here. I'm going to try not to get up against this edge just yet. And this gets really fun when we start using some different color combinations like we'll be using tonight. And because this is so wet, I'm just going to leave this little bit of space in between there so they don't mix. All right, you guessed it, we're going to be moving around to our blue color. So I'm going to need to mix up a little bit more of this yellow that is just straight yellow, because I don't actually want it to be a clean mixture here. So I'm going to take a little bit more of my yellow color. I'm going to make a little separate pile here because yellow just needs a little dab of color to change it. So we'll just take a little bit of our ultramarine blue here. So this will be a yellow kind of green color. Some people call this kind of a green gold color. And we'll put it on this other side of our yellow here. The colors are listed underneath each of these wheels. Hopefully you can read my handwriting there. But this is definitely a green gold. So while this kind of dries, maybe we will go to this other side here just because it gives it a little bit of a moment to dry. So we're going to have a little bit of our ultramarine blue here with just a tiny bit of yellow in it. I'm just going to take a little bit of our yellow and add this in, and you can see this changes this blue into kind of a blue-green color. Definitely a little bit different than our ultramarine straight. So we'll put this one in next to it. All the animals are out tonight. This is Harlow. She's gonna meow a little bit. So you can see how that really changes this blue. And just a little bit of color can do that. Also, colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheel are really nice too. Those are complements and they can mute each other out. So sometimes if you have a little bit too much blue, you could dip into your orange and add that to your blue and it will mute, excuse me, mute it out just a little bit and make it a little dustier, a little less vibrant. Okay, so right smack dab in the middle here is going to be our secondary color, and that is going to be a green. So we're going to take equal parts of our yellow and our blue. This is what we're shooting for. I have probably not the best brush for mixing stuff, but we're looking for a pretty good green here. I'll mix a little yellow in there. Yeah, I think this is going to be a good green here. All right. smack in the middle. This is our secondary color. This is our green. Sometimes, depending on the yellow that you use or the blue, you can have a much more vibrant green. But there you go. This is what we get when we mix this CAD yellow or permanent yellow with ultramarine blue. Of course, and I'm going to label these actually. So we're going to have our oranges here and our green. Those are secondary colors. And then of course, this is going to be a purple color. So we're going to mix our red and our blues to see what we get from there. I'm going to switch up brushes here just for mixing. And let's mix our colors here so we can have vibrant pigments. I'm going to move this to the side so you can see my palette. So a little bit more CAD. This might be the consistency of cream. We talked about this in our last little class. So it's pretty pigmented here. It helps when you have a bigger brush. And then we'll get some ultramarine blue. And you may have to change out your water during this. So I think it's always good rule of thumb to have a couple water receptacles if you can. All right, so we have some of this ultramarine blue. I'm just going to add a little bit of our red to this. More blue than we have red. So we have this kind of blue violet color happening. We'll see if this big brush can go on my palette here, or I'm sorry, my color wheel here. So I'm going to put this right next to my ultramarine blue. It's a little bit better with this big brush. These flats are nice because they can do straight lines a little bit easier sometimes. Just tapping in some of this pigment. Really pretty blue violet. Okay. So then what we can do, I'm going to let this dry. We're going to do some mixing here. I may hit this with a hair dryer. We're going to mix up more equal parts of blue and red. So this would be a nice purple. I got to hit this with a hair dryer really quick and keep mixing, and I'll be right back. Okay, so this looks awful red here. A red kind of purple. But this is a good grape color. So that's what we're shooting for. And this is our purple color. Hopefully that looks a little bit different. Maybe we need to add a little bit more red in there. So this is our grape color. What's great about ultramarine blue is all the granulation that it gives us. And that would be our purple. And it looks pretty close here. We'll see how it looks when it dries. But while it's drying, so purple, it's a secondary color. Green is a secondary color. Orange is a secondary color. They are mixed from primary colors. All right, so we're going to have our red violet color that we're going to mix, and we can mix a little bit of our mixture here. So I have had a cough for a little bit, so we're trying to a little cough drop in so I'm not coughing too much here. But you can see this is a much more red color that we've mixed here. And I'm just going to lay this in to this slot here. And I picked these colors because they're kind of standard colors that you might have in your palette. A lot of my students have these in their palette. So it's really approachable. You shouldn't have to buy colors for this exercise. You may have them already in your palette. Otherwise, just exercise this with what you have in your current palette and see what colors you can make with the colors that you have on hand. All right, so moving right along, we're going to move to our next one. I'm really hopeful that we can get all three of these done in class tonight. So we'll just clean off our palette and keep moving. And you know what I have for colors, some of you might be asking, well, what paints do you have? I actually have a ton of watercolor paints because I, over the years, have collected colors and painted a lot in watercolor. And I'll show you. I actually have this great kit that my husband Kyle bought me years ago that when we started dating, actually, he bought this for me and has so many colors in it. So if you were interested in testing out colors, you could get something similar to this. These are Holbein watercolors. But by no means do you need to do this. The color, I always say what you have is what you need, what is good enough to get you going. But if you're looking for, a variety of different paints, you want to test something out, but you maybe don't want to commit, I guarantee that they will last you forever. So this next one, you could use a lemon yellow. You could use a Hansa yellow. There's a yellow that I really love, Core watercolors, and they have a Hansa yellow color. Or Hansa, I always call it Hansa, but it's like a lemon yellow. And we're going to use, for our delicate triad, we are going to use Hansa yellow, or yellow light, or lemon yellow. cobalt blue and quinacridone magenta, you're going to get entirely different feel with these colors than we did with this first color wheel. And so this one's really fun. This is like CMYK almost, if you know what that is. And this will be kind of a fun exercise in color. So I'll kind of flip this around so you can see. The great thing about watercolor is I can put this on my palette, it will dry, and you can reconstitute it. So if you're using something out of the tube, don't throw it away, because this is still really good and useful. So our cobalt, I'm just using a little bit here because I'm doing this exercise. And I think I have a magenta here. Let's look at this. Yep. Let's see this. Let's compare these two here. Pretty sure this is the same color. Yeah. It's a little bit more pigmented though here. So we'll take that. So we have mixing out this quinacridone magenta. Brush here. Our cobalt. This is defined as cobalt blue hue. It looks a lot like phthalo, so you could probably use phthalo blue. And then I am going to clean off my brush here and we'll get into our yellow. Yeah, you see how lemony and great this color is. Okay. So with these colors, we're going to hit our color wheel here. And I'm just going to put them in these marked slots. Sorry, my desk needs to be bigger, I feel like. So we're going to put our yellow in. And you can see how different this yellow is versus that yellow. I need more water here. Really lemony. And I always think really the ideal, you know, a lot of people will tell you different things about color palettes, especially in the oil painting realm. But I think having 6 colors for your color wheel, so you'd have a warm and cool of each color, is kind of ideal. And I've done some classes on YouTube about this before, so we're really not going to touch on it too much in this class, but I think having a little bit of both is great. You can mix any color that way. Okay, so our magenta is going to go in our red spot. And this is really a very pretty berry hot pink fuchsia color. And then we'll put our cobalt in. Again, you can see the difference between these two colors right away. The only thing that's missing out of the CMYK equation is the K, or the black part. but this is really fun. We'll have a lot of fun with this. Okay. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing that we did before. Is we'll start with our magenta here, and we'll add a little bit of this lemon yellow. And you can see, actually you can't see, it turns it a little bit corally. It's a really beautiful color here. Just a little bit more coral and less hot pink. So let's see what this looks like on our color wheel. Just a very subtle shift here. And we'll see what that looks like when it dries, but very subtle. Shift. Okay, so as we'll get a little bit more yellow, and we'll add a little bit more yellow into this. Now this would be our this would be kind of our on the lighter spectrum, but we'll add some more magenta here. We're really looking for an orange or peachy hue, because this will be our secondary color. So I'm definitely going to need a little bit more yellow. We might have to remix our yellow, but I think this will work. So we'll put it right next to our other color that we mixed here. Careful not to have them touch too much here as we're mixing, but these are some nice subtle changes here in this color with this color palette. Let's straighten up here a little bit. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna have to get a little bit more yellow in my mixture. And we've got more yellow than we do magenta. And you can kind of see the difference here. You might even be able to mix a little bit more of that magenta in. We just don't want it to be too close to our kind of middle of the road secondary color. There we go. So I'm going to mark what would be our orange or our secondary color right in the center. And we'll keep moving around here because I want to make sure that we get to our old masters here. But some beautiful subtle color shifts here. This is definitely a fun color palette. So we're going to work between yellow and blue now, and we'll mix up a little bit of our, excuse me, I'll kind of scoot this over for a minute and bring my palette over. So we'll get a little bit of our phthalo blue moving over. And I'll get a different brush in my yellow. We just need a little bit of this yellow in our blue. And you can see this is kind of a blue-green color. It almost feels a little bit turquoise. Of course, we're going to have more of a vibrant green, but let's see what this looks like on our color wheel. So we'll snag this again. Oh, I went to the wrong side. So we're going to go back this way. I have more blue in this than yellow. Going the wrong way, guys. But you can see this really pretty, subtle, kind of turquoise color here. And of course, we're going to go this way. So we're going to add more yellow to this, because we're really shooting for more of a kind of a middle of the road kind of green. So kind of equal parts of yellow and phthalo, or I'm sorry, I keep calling it phthalo, but it's cobalt blue. It really looks like phthalo, and I'm pretty sure you'd get a similar result there. So we'll kind of mix these two so we have this kind of nice, subtle green. And you can see the difference between these two here. Kind of butt this up next to it here. And this is why I believe this is called the delicate triad, because it is nice and soft in color. So of course now we're going to have our yellow green color. We're going to mix it. We're going to have more yellow than blue, and you might even be able to do this with your what you've mixed already. A nice kind of, you can create a nice limey green, and you can see the difference there. Might even be able to add a little bit more of the blue into there, but we have this nice, really nice color. Okay, so you might still be mixing. We have about 20 more minutes, so we'll keep going. We're going to mix our blue and our magenta, and starting off here, as I scoot over maybe, we're going to add a little bit of magenta to our cobalt blue here. So more yes, more cobalt. This kind of has like a really nice kind of royal blue color. Really beautiful. Of course, as you bring a little bit more magenta in here, we get a really nice purple color. And this really fits the bill for grape. And what I love about this is these are only 3 colors. You can pretty much mix whatever kind of colors that you want. Convenience colors are often, they can be single pigment colors, but often they're mixtures of colors. And so if you know how to mix colors, then you can mix whatever colors. You don't have to buy pre-mixed colors. So we have our purple, we have our green here, and our orange, which are our secondary colors. And last but not least, we're going to add just a little bit of that blue to our magenta. So we're going to mix this up because this is going to create kind of this warm purpley color. And that is our delicate triad, which this is a really fun one. I would really like to do some paintings with this color combo. And so maybe that's something that we can do in the future of our class, is to do that. All right, so next we're going to move to our Old Masters palette. I'm going to clean off this palette. And you're going to need, if you're playing along with me, we're going to use a burnt umber. I'll just throw these up here. This might be easier. A burnt umber, a Payne's gray, and a yellow ochre. Similar principles that we've been doing, but you're going to have a much more muted and different color palette. And there are a lot of different color palettes that you could choose from. These aren't the only ones, but these might be some interesting ones to get playing. Okay, so I have some yellow ochre already on my palette. I'm gonna hit that first. And although it's got some other colors in it. So let's get to mixing some colors here. You can see much more muted, not as vibrant as what we have been using. And then we're going to use some burnt umber. I use burnt umber a lot in oil painting, a lot less in watercolor. And I do really enjoy a good Payne's gray, which would be in place of our blue. You can also use this as a dark color instead of black. But let's, you can kind of see this is kind of like a really dark blue. And I guess this burnt umber is going to count as kind of our red. Okay, so I redid the old Masters palette because I did it wrong. And so we're going to do take 2 of this. So we have yellow ochre. We have burnt umber. And we have Payne's gray. All right, and so we will hit this again. Yeah. So I've got to remember that the burnt umber fits into our red category. These are not the neatest color wheels that we'll do. But we're looking for useful, right? Useful color wheels. Okay, so there is our burnt umber. We're going to hit our yellow ochre and put it in our yellow slot over here. And these changes are going to be pretty subtle. As we work through these. At least on the red side, quote, red side. And then we're going to put in our Payne's gray. I like Payne's gray for a dark color if you're going to use something out of the tube. But everybody has their preferences. Some teachers, you know, don't believe in using black out of the tube, and you know, they're purists. You need to mix your blacks, and that's I do generally for my oil painting, but it's really a personal preference as to what you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to let these dry. We're going to keep working, and I have kind of worked here a little bit already. But we'll get a little bit of our umber going here with a dash of our yellow ochre. And this will just be a subtle change for this color. This just feels really subtle. I don't even know if on the screen there you can tell the difference here, but we're going to go for it. So this is burnt umber with a little bit of yellow ochre. That yellow ochre is going to make it a little bit cloudier. It starts feeling a little bit more like kind of a burnt sienna color. And it's hard to see on the screen here, but it's pretty subtle. Then we'll add, this mixture is adding in a little bit more of this yellow ochre into this mixture. So it's more equal parts of these two. And this would be what would be our secondary mixture or secondary color of this. It doesn't even look like an orange, but equal parts here, it would be the secondary color between these two mixtures. And I'm just trying to get barely close because I don't want those two things to touch there. But then we will go over to our yellow side. We're going to go down to our yellow ochre side here because this is just straight pigment, and just take a little bit of our burnt umber. This is going to be more on the yellow side without being the straight pigment, and it might look pretty similar. to our mixture here. But these are pretty subtle changes too. Okay, moving right along. So I'm gonna kind of clean this up a little bit. I'm gonna get some more yellow ochre out on the palette. And we're gonna just use a dash of our Payne's Gray in this. Maybe easier said than done. So that is a subtle change here to that direct yellow mixture. But you can see that we have a bit of a shift in temperature and color. All right, and so in theory, we should do our middle of the road color. This is going to be our secondary color. So a little bit more of this Payne's Gray, maybe a bit more yellow. Might take a little more pigment here. And that changes it a lot. In theory, this would be this is a kind of a green color, even though it's a muted green. You can definitely see it here. And ultimately, we want to be able to see these changes in between these colors. It can be a little more challenging. Do your best. So you can see that would be our green color. This is our secondary color. This would be our orange color. And over here is going to be what would be our purple color. So moving right along, we're going to have more Payne's Gray in this mixture than we do yellow ochre. Let's see. Just a little bit more yellow. And you can see this is a dark kind of green color. And I have quite a bit of pigment here on this brush. Less water, more pigment, it appears. So this is a nice, rich color. It'd be really fun to do a landscape, I think, with this palette. And that feels very dark. It could be my mixture of pigments. Okay, so I'm going to reload here a little bit. Kind of clean up, and so we can do the last stretch here. Let's put a little bit more burnt umber here. Quite a bit of gum arabic coming out there, or binder. Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to be working in between these two. My brain's just not functioning apparently today, so we'll get a little bit more of our Payne's Gray out. And we'll mix a little bit. I'm going to kind of mix this together a little bit to mix that binder and the pigment. So we'll start on this end and move this way since my brush is already in this pigment. So more burnt umber, a dab of Payne's Gray. That's quite a bit of Payne's Gray, but and then we'll lay this in. As you can see, my pie is not even by any stretch of the imagination here, but some people need bigger slices, right? That's my story. Say some colors need bigger slices. Definitely a difference here. And then we'll keep moving. We'll add a little bit more of our Payne's Gray to this mixture. Maybe some water to this. There we go. And this would be probably what we would consider our purple color. Just some beautiful colors here. Great mixture for kind of a purpley brown. So this would be our secondary color between these colors. And last, we'll dip into our Payne's Gray here. And we'll have more of this Payne's Gray in this. It definitely grays it out. Turn this sideways. Some nice granulation here. But by understanding what your colors can do, what they can make, it really informs the kind of artwork that you can make and the mood that you can create for your painting. So even though this is kind of a slapdash and dirty color wheel, this is really useful for you as you experiment with color mixing and different colors of paint. Let's scoot this over. And you can see our other color wheels here too. You can see I got off on this one, so you can see how they're all distinctly different. We have one that's a little bit brighter and kind of delicate colors, maybe a more standard color palette. And then we have this old Masters palette, which has some charm and interest in it as well. And definitely each one of these creates a different kind of mood and a different feeling when you're painting. So do you have a favorite color palette? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, let's talk about it. And yeah, tell me your favorite color palette. Do you lean towards a specific color palette as you're working in your painting? For my students who are part of my private class, this might be a great time to pick one of these color palettes for our next class. Is there something that maybe you want to explore and do something differently? Maybe we do something all in this color palette. This feels very Thanksgiving-ish. Or maybe you want to do something cheery and full of color. So you tell me. Let's see what our comments say. Hey, everybody. Excuse me. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll see if anybody lays down some comments for us. I appreciate everybody who was able to join tonight and find the live stream. It's really fun to explore color and to see what it can do for us. So hopefully you learned something you didn't know before and you learned something a little bit new. And we do have a little bit of a delay here on YouTube, so we'll kind of hang out here for a minute and see if anybody leaves a comment or has questions. Right now, our next class is a private class that is at the end of the month. And I still haven't decided on what we're going to do. We had a great recommendation of a pheasant. So I am keeping that in the back of my mind. I'm also doing a little travel this coming week, so we'll see if I run across anything that's great for photo reference for class, because it would be Southwestern in theme, I think. So if you do have ideas and you're part of the Watercolor Rockstar Paint Club, you can leave those in our Facebook group. And yeah, we can talk about it there. I also want to just put a little bug in my students' ear. You know, we'll be planning next year come December. And so if you have some things that you want to explore or subject matter that you want to paint and draw via the YouTube channel and our private class, drop it in the Facebook group. I definitely want to encourage you to help me find subject matter that you want to paint and draw, since we're doing a lot of drawing this year. All right, well, I don't have any comments, it looks like, so we're probably good to go. I know it's late over on the East Coast, and so if you hung out and you painted along or watched tonight's class, thanks for tuning in. And thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight and was able to join. So if you have questions, comments, leave them below. If you're part of the Rockstar Paint Club, you can leave that information in our Facebook group. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to paigeweber.net. Thanks, guys, and have a great rest of your week and weekend. We'll see you later.